Greetings, Jan Hutchins here, along with the men's school coaches. We're talking about the ways in which we behave that might be models for others, and is an inspiration for one another. So we're going to record the check-in as we first come together here today. So we're beginning, and Dene, fresh off of an NWTA, as am I, is going to lead us off.
Thank you. Checking in, Dene Maria-Sebastiana, Sun Lizard, May 88, Chicago, Hyma Woods. I'm in beautiful Colorado, by the way, and I'm going to turn it around and show it to you. Evan, you know this shit. Jan, you may not.
Holy Toledo, what's that? Wow.
The
grass is white there.
I didn't come here anticipating fucking snow, but I got it. But it's gorgeous. Gorgeous. Yeah. We had a lovely weekend. We're up in the actually down south. The weather was gorgeous. We had a staff of 50 men. We had 32 men walk through the door, 2 left, 30 stayed and finished. From the Thursday night staff meeting, I could feel that there was a cohesive energy in the staff. You know what a feeling that is? It's kind of an intuitive feeling. You sense in the first couple of conversations whether there's shit stirring, whether everybody's pissed off about accountability and clearing shit on the front side of all of it. But these men came, they were clean, they were open-hearted, they were just so beautiful. I was an emeritus. I had lived in this community for 7 years, so I knew several of the men, but most of them are newbies. There was a guy from Northern California named Barry Freeman.
Oh, yeah. He's pretty special, dude.
He was very special. He was very special. The part that I really want to, there were so many gifts, as there are on a weekend, that have all kinds of shapes and forms and textures to them. What I saw, because I've been working on this, is the teaching piece on Saturday about feelings and I statements. For me, it's about emotional literacy. And for me, in my work, in my own inner work and the work that I do with my clients, it always is focused around emotional literacy. The ability to be in the body and notice what arises and what those sensations and feelings and emotions mean, where they come from, why we do what we do. It's a whole thing that I am now finally virtually immersed in the study of. I've rewritten the protocols. I've rewritten emotional literacy. I got about 25 pages of stuff with diagrams and brain structures, and in MKP's Eternal Wisdom, it was mixed. So Richard Torres and I are in the process of fine-tuning it. But I'm going to take it, maybe even to the leader trainers, but certainly I'm going to write. I've got a book now that I'm ready to put out there, and it is about emotional literacy. Many men experience it. I've done this 3 or 4 times now in this new format, and men, both staff and initiates, seem to like it greatly. The big piece
on that note, Dene, just want to say to the folks listening, and I think I shared this with you, Evan, but when we did the training in Mexico and Dene did this piece, the initiates stood up and gave him a standing ovation afterwards. They were so moved by the depth he guided them to understand about themselves. It was beautiful to watch. Go ahead.
That does not surprise me one bit.
Thank you. So this one, because the feedback that I had gotten from everybody, especially from Francis, was it runs overtime. So I had to trim it down. And it did, and I did. But the key piece that men got is as they track down the body, as they go deeper and deeper from the raw reaction into deeper vulnerability, from anger and sadness and shame and fear, that inevitably we got to drop through the bottom, which is grief. We got fall into the river of grief and surrender to the helplessness, to the to the powerlessness. I think, and when we can get the outcome of that is joy. You got to go through the shit to get to the joy. It feels like joy and grief are the same, opposite sides of the same coin. So that being said, I noticed the staff men in their check-ins in our staff meetings, and the initiates on the carpet dropped into joy more than I had ever seen
Into
on a
grief or
weekend
joy?
drop into joy.
Into joy.
And the net result, into grief. Into grief. The net result of each of them dropping into grief was a sweetness, a tenderness, that vulnerability connects us like glove glue. And it ripples throughout the whole space. Spirit's present to us when we're in those places. I did my own piece around my son at the fire on Sunday morning with Steve Smith, an elder and a man who's been in recovery forever. So I came out joyful, grateful, humbled. We did great work this weekend. And so I keep coming back. It's just so fucking juicy.
Oh.
And Evan, you got kudos from a number of them in the work that you're doing with the raw stuff in the mountain community. So we're all in this, brother. We're all playing our roles and bringing our gifts. And maybe one of these days we'll all staff a weekend together. Wouldn't that be the tits?
Cool. That'd be way cool.
So I for now I'm in.
Oh.
Awesome. Well, I'll check in on that line of energy around one, what it's like when men come together and they're clean in terms of not having any business with each other, and how the bottom just drops out then in terms of potential for where men can go. And that grief piece is really as present and close to the bone for me now in my life as it's ever been, with my parents at 98 and 90, and the surgeries, heart surgery, open heart shit coming up in a couple of weeks. All my kids are out of the house. It's emptier now than it's ever been. My buddy, co-pilot of 15 years over here, Conan, is passing.
Jesus.
I'm on at 3 years after a divorce, I am still grieving. And, I hear about the sweetness that you talk about for men in those moments, Dennis. And then for me, I think it gets a little fermented after a while. It gets kind of sour, and it's not so sweet. When it comes to my sadness and grief around my primary relationship to the woman in my life, the amount of bandwidth that consumes, how much that impacts so much more. I mean, even the relationships, I think would be the opposite with my parents and my kids, how I've sold myself out in so many ways for this illusion of safety and a partnership that will support me in slaying dragons every day. And when that doesn't happen, how much harder, how much heavier that load seems to get. And so it's fall, and here in Jackson Hole, it's been snowing too. It's white outside. We had some snowstorms with snowflakes like this yesterday. It was awesome. I'm so ready. I'm in this transition between summer and winter, and this kind of limbo. I mean, what's going on outside is such a reflection of what's going on inside for me. The leaves are coming off the trees, and lives are going, and things are passing, and I'm going to be more on my own than I've ever been in any way in my life. Being in partnership, being this community of men, the brothers in my life that I have that are constantly connecting with to help me bear what's unbearable sometimes for me. And the grief is on the tip of my tongue all the fucking time. And Fortunately, in the palate, in the back of my mouth, there's some joy, but there's some joy buds in terms of what I have to look forward to, what I can taste, as far as my vision of what's possible for me, in spite of where I tell myself I'm at. So, this emotional literacy and bandwidth is important. What I do when I label those things, how I am with myself as I go through that process, and the stories I tell myself when I'm alone, I'm in trouble. And that's what keeps me up at night. And it's in Community as a Man, on weekends, in my I group, on the phone, that I get this other reflection.
Yes.
Yes. And Dennis,
you can't do this alone, man. We just can't do this alone.
You've been help. This is my second marriage. You've had my back on. The 25 years we've known each other. So
yes.
I can't imagine, doing it alone. So that's my piece about men's work and why I do what I do as a coach, and the extent of the experience I have in my own life to support other men in bearing what seems unbearable sometimes.
Yes.
And I'm always grateful to come back to that and to stand on the shoulders of men like you who've been my teachers for so long. And I wouldn't have all the relationships I have with my kids, my ex-wife, my parents, the world, without it. It would be a completely different color and texture for me.
Yeah.
With that, I have a lot of gratitude for, and that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
Bless you. Thank you.
Jan, before you check in, I'd like to layer something in because it's up, if I may.
Please.
It's also, I sit here in Colorado and there's snow on the ground and there's clouds in the sky and it's beautiful. And I'm reminded, Evan, in the grieving piece, we're in the season of the ending of the magician and we're entering the season of the king. We're entering into the winter in the north, the white hoariness of all aging and old age and death and loss, and the grief that inevitably comes with that. But I think this is true for me. My transformation always arises out of my willingness to grieve.
Right.
The grief, the surrender, the heartbreak, to be able to continue loving through the heartbreak, during the heartbreak especially, I think expands our emotional body in ways that we do not understand. And if there is a real transformation and rebirth, I think it comes through this process and
right.
the king dying.
Right. But let me put a piece of context in here just to put it like a timestamp on this recording. This is a week after the massacre in Vegas. I think I shared with you, Dennis, like the day after that happened in Houston, I got a phone call from Search and Rescue in Canada. Did we have that conversation?
Yes.
Yeah. So just a headline, I gave my son a personal locator beacon for his backcountry wilderness climbing and skiing. And I got a call from the Search and Rescue. It takes my breath away now.
Yeah.
It was like a 48-hour news cycle. As much as I tried to stay away from it, and it's only been 2 weeks, there's only so much grief and embracing and running into that fire any of us can stand, especially in times like these, right? Because the pain and suffering is fucking endemic.
Yes.
And sometimes my inability to go to it in one direction affects how I show up somewhere else. For sure, it's like we had a guy, a man, Jay, took his own life 2 months after a weekend, and he'd been in treatment for depression. He was an accomplished physician with a beautiful wife and family, and he'd been struggling with depression forever. And we had a process for him on Saturday, a community circle. His wife was blessed the entire process. She knows that the last 6 weeks of his life, he had more love in his life than he'd ever probably been able to take in, because he talked about what happened on his weekend. But on Sunday night on his way home, he called somebody, said he wanted to kill himself then already. It was too good for him. You know, and that stuff happens more often than we realize close to home.
Yeah.
And because my heart can only take so much, I will only, you know, see so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything else I can get really repelled by in a way that makes
disconnected. Disconnected.
Brittle and dried up and angry and want to sit in front of the TV, drink beer, smoke pot, watch porn, you know, whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
You know, with this right now.
And within the last couple of months, we've had three hurricanes that devastated a bunch of places in the Caribbean, wiped out Houston, two earthquakes in Mexico.
Puerto Rico still didn't have power.
Puerto Rico still doesn't have power. I mean, you know, the Western Hemisphere is fucking exploding.
Right.
So there is a grief that's not only personal, but there's a grief that's collective.
Right.
And that collective grief, I mean, you know, I remember hearing something quite back in the 60s around Vietnam that if Lincoln had lived long enough, he would have let the whole country grieve the Civil War. We never grieved the Civil War. We never grieved World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. We don't know how to grieve as a collective. And it shows there's a rigidity in the people, in the American way of living. There's an angst and a tightness. But, you know, I think maybe Mother Nature has taken us to school.
Well, and I want to go back to what you talked about. You opened this conversation up with about how this weekend was so different for you and what you brought to the lens through which we view that kind of grief. And in that space, we can do the collective, what's going on in the world, our target group, you know, whatever it may be, and the personal work, you know, in our own lives close to home. Because there is self and other, but there's this place in the middle, this third place, you know, where it's all ours, right?
Yes. You know, we talk about the personal, the interpersonal, the group/family, the institutional, cultural. I think those five wound us, then those five have to be healed.
Right. To be in right relationship with those things.
With all of those dimensions.
Right.
Jan, why don't you thank you for giving me and Evan room to have this dialectic back and forth, which I think was delicious, but, you know, please check in. If you would.
It's more than delicious, and I'm really happy that folks are going to get to see how fully we dance with one another. So what speaks to me is my friend Michael Pritchard, who is a comedian, and I say he's maybe the best first responder I know. He was a first responder and worked in lots of ways in which he would physically show up and help people. And now he's using his comedy to basically go to every opportunity to deal with young people and dying people to be there for them and provide space. And he interceded himself in one of the Facebook arguments today with the recognition that he could laugh at whatever was going on and hold a heart space and love for whatever was going on. And he has been at the site of grief so often in his life that it is true he winds up now beyond grief in some ways. He just has fully been cleared and carries that joy you described all the time. He has been so deep and sunken so long in, he marinated in grief for long enough that he bubbled to the surface full of joy. And I, from my experience with him, he will hold that space until. And he just went through his own open heart deal last year and did it with the kind of grace that convinces me this is a real thing for him. So I say that, and I also hope that I can provide something of a model for having, since you men have watched me go through my own grief here in the last several months as I transition and figure out which path to take. And Dene, like Evan, you've been such a king in that process for me. And that the immersion I decided to create, and kind of thanks to you, Danny, helped co-create when the training in Mexico, then a training in in Northern California, and then the training here in Arizona this weekend. Those 3 weekends in a 6-week period have provided me with a template for the way in which this letting go and falling into the relationship of a container of men who can, by their example, change the limbic attachments for me that were about, I need something out there, to I get to watch a man be able to be sufficient. I get to hear from Dene ways in which I can catch myself when I fall into that I need somebody or something. I get to have all these experiences, which, as the book I'm reading, A General Theory of Love, says that's kind of the whole way.
That's a great fucking book.
That is way past great, Dene. It has changed my whole understanding and appreciation of what coaching is. It's amazing to me. In fact, I just got through reading to one of our friends the piece in which it says, no matter what they say, whatever technique, process, name it, Freudian, Jungian, any of the kinds of shadow work, magic work, king work, workity work, it's all about the person you're working with. It is that limbic attachment that comes from seeing another person handle something that I can get my own inner self. Oh, that's handleable. Whereas I feel, because of my own attractors, my own habits and patterns, wounds and shadows, I don't know how to do that. My body, my chemistry does not understand how to handle that particular issue. So I can see it through another. And that's what our relatedness is about. And that's what a good coach is about. It's someone you actually have to identify. I actually want to be like that and have those limbic responses if I'm going to enter into that relationship. So with all that, I can check saying I feel real joy that the message you're talking about is being conveyed on the weekends. A similar sort of the blessing of this work having found me through the death of a child, makes it all the more poignant that this is why I made it to this age and it's what I want to do the rest of my little trip here. And I feel incredibly held and loved. And I'll finish with saying, I changed my animal name. Dene knows really well, Evan. You don't know as well. I changed my animal name a lot. And I usually do something that is not like everybody else. It's one of my shadows that I don't want.
Why does that not surprise me?
I want to be like it. So I had to admit, these men who have just met me were all pinging back a kind of reflection that I could not deny. So I have become not just paying attention, which I took as a high-minded way of making myself seem like I'm paying attention. Instead, I have become coyote paying attention. Nice. Coyote, because that is my attitude. I truly like to fuck with myself and pretend everything around me. If you ask me to sit down or stand up, I will refuse. I just have coyote and Hayoka energy.
Hayoka.
Yeah. And it is a power for me to be on the outside looking in. I think I really serve the container better when I am always watching for any pretense, any foolishness, or any loss of focus, and then making fun of it.
You know, archetypally, the king had a fool. The fool was the only one that could speak the truth.
Right.
Everybody was in the trance except the fool. And I think sometimes you need to take drugs to get out of being the fool, out of being, in the court, to get into the mindset of the fool.
Have to get into the trance to be in the trance.
And to get out of the trance. Yeah. In fact, there's something, I saw a link today on people taking micro doses of LSD. I'm going to send you the link. It's quite interesting.
This is this is going to be a public video, so keep on.
I know.
Confidential.
Okay.
And I hear you. So my willingness to let an animal name be part of my name and lose that separation was essentially my bowing to this particular community here, the New Southwest community, and saying, I see you, men, and I trust you enough that I'm willing to be part of it in a symbolic way. and I'll take an animal name as opposed to my resistance. And it was a tearful, beautiful, wonderful weekend. And I don't need to describe it. I think there's a similarity that you men understand. It was a very special experience, and there are 23 men here who stepped through. And to watch them come, and the difference when they left, and they look you in the eye and say, "Yeah, I hear it. I'm going to go out and make my life better." It's a sweet and powerful thing. So, Coyote, and I'm in.
You are Coyote.
You're Coyote. Coyote paying attention.
Coyote.
Coyote paying attention. Coyote paying attention. Aho.
Oh,
You know, traditionally, it's always been the community and usually of elders when the young men would come back from their adventure, ritual, initiation, and it was the elders that would name them. They would give them their true name. You know, you spoke about that here before, Dennis, singing the song in our true nature. But Jan, I want to go back to, where you started your check-in off with your buddy Tom, I think, Pritchard.
it's Michael Pritchard.
Michael Pritchard and his humor and how that connects with that animal name of the coyote and how important humor is in being able to go through wholeheartedly the experience of being fucking awake as a man in the world today. And how hard that is.
So much I don't want to see.
It's interesting you checked in with that piece, and then you talked about your new animal name. And I see a real connection because there is humor in that. It's not just the fool or the court jester. There's such a deep penetrating wisdom. I think of the Dalai Lama. I mean, in his tradition, they do really, dark in terms of what's embodied on meditations facing death and the warrior way. And, the dealing with the terror of confronting the reality of all of our existence, period, because nobody gets out alive, but leaning into the pain and the suffering in the world and our own lives and with others. And how on the other side of that, you've got this precious, innocent, way of looking at the world at that.
Not hearing you. Did you mute yourself by accident?
Oh, yep. Sorry, I hit mute. Yeah, and so I want to bless and honor that piece and your new animal name that I hear. And joy, the joy that brings, that is part of the warrior way, at least in terms of we teach it, I think, and going into battle, knowing today's a good day to die. Everything's in fucking order. It's time to get guns going, and bringing our heart to it.
And I think when we stop being afraid to die, we start being willing to live.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think I can, and of course, the ego dances with the idea of death in a zillion different ways. And I can say, I'm not afraid to die, but that part of my ego and that part of my body is afraid to die, is as true as, my illusions that I'm not afraid. But the more I'm willing to go into the heart of my own darkness, and maybe that's the preparation I sense that I can do on a daily basis that prepares me for the inevitability of death. Going into my own heart of darkness and feeling the ache and the pain that's there. And the more willing I am to do that, the more the heart seems to expand its capacity to embrace what is in a loving way. Mm-hmm. To be able to cry, and I don't think we can really belly laugh until we really cry. And the truth is, I keep coming back to these fucking NWTAs because I laugh the heartiest and I cry the deepest when I'm in these fucking circles with men.
Minutes apart.
God fucking bless us for the work that we do.
Right.
And I should say, speaking of the work that I do, and I want to finish this kind of so it doesn't go too long, but to let both of you know that I was struck by the number of men who came up to me who said, "You're the guy who's with those guys who are doing the men's school, and that the stuff you guys are putting out is so cool. Keep doing it. Thank you. It's making a difference in my life, and it's really nice to see you men talk to one another about these kinds of things because, as I was saying before, it has a an effect on those very cells of people who are watching us. And it's not to make more of us doing this. This is just the way mammals learn.
Yep.
By seeing each other model behaviors. So I'll call this the end unless somebody has something. You have anything to say or add right now, Denny?
Are we going to go into emotional literacy specifically on our second video?
Let's do a separate recording so people can consume this one, and then we'll come back with emotional literacy, and we'll post that later this week.
I'm really happy with our check-in.
I love that smile. Way to go, man. Thank you, men, and we will talk again.